Hi, this is Outlaw Bookseller. Welcome to my channel. And I thought we'd do some science fiction today. We haven't done any for a while. Normally I do loads, as you know. So if you're new to the channel, you like SF, please subscribe. Subscribe anyway, because there's all sorts of things here. We're very interdisciplinary, right across literature, music, what have you. And I just wanted to talk about the state of British publishing as regards to SF, because it's been preying on my mind a lot recently. A lot of the sort of best traditional science fiction writing that's being published is not getting into the bookshops very much, or in tiny quantities. And when I say traditional science fiction writing, I mean sort of British literary science fiction rather than the space opera sort of thing. So, you know, if you're after books by people like Christopher Priest, Adam Roberts, Dave Hutchinson, you know, you're probably going to struggle at the moment. And even the space opera writers are getting short shrift. And a lot of the money is going to fantasy publishing. And, you know, there's been that struggle since the late 70s when the fantasy boom started, with the money being spent increasingly on fantasy and less on SF. And I can only put this down to, you know, sort of the publishers employing some young, inexperienced people who are not that well versed in the genre and who are doing a poor job of curating it. And, you know, I'm sure some of them are not, some of them are, and they've got to go after the money because publishing is a business. But quite frankly, I mean, I'm going to pick on Gollancz today, quite honestly. Now, Gollancz, of course, the great British SF publisher who really sort of curated science fiction in hardcover from 1961 with The Drowned World by J.G. Ballard. They did some SF before that, but that's when they started their Yellow Jackets. And, you know, they've really done a poor job recently. They're resting on their laurels because they have the rights to loads of things they originally published in hardcover, and they do the Masterworks series, which are now well established. And a lot of the new stuff is just generic fantasy novels. So, but that's something for another time. What I really want to talk about today is what they laughingly called their Golden Age Masterworks. And this is Arthur C. Clarke's Against the Fall of Night. That's a typical Golden Age masterwork. And I'm really going to pick a bone with this, because the fact is the majority of the books published in this imprint are not Golden Age science fiction. First of all, to critique Gollancz a bit more, to get a complete list of their Golden Age Masterworks, the series started in 2019, and okay, you know, it's been rather sort of depressed by the pandemic. But the fact is this, is that, you know, you have to look on Wikipedia to get a complete list of these things. The Gollancz website, like most publishers' websites, you cannot get an A to Z by author listing within particular genres of what books they do. A to Z by author is how books are organised in bookshops and in libraries, yet so few publishers seem to grasp this. Bizarre. Is it because they're employing computer people to do their websites rather than bookie people to advise them? I suspect so. Even Penguin, you can't go on their site and get a complete A to Z list by author of, say, their Penguin Modern Classics authors. So that's a gripe that's affecting publishing generally. But as I said, to get back to the Golden Age Masterworks, the fact is most of them are not from the Golden Age. I'm going to show you some of the books which are from the Golden Age and talk about my favourites as such. My favourite Golden Age science fiction novel is Henry Kuttner's Fury, which is superb. I think this and its prequel, Clash by Night, belong in every good SF library. It was possibly written in tandem with his wife, C.L. Moore, Catherine Lucille Moore. And this to me is like a forerunner of what Alfred Bester did in the 50s. This was published in the early 40s. That's a genuine Golden Age masterwork. So what is the Golden Age? The Golden Age of SF is generally considered by experts, and it's been considered like this since at least the mid-70s, to be the period between July 1939 and maybe the end of the 40s. Some say 1946. So it's a small period. And it's pretty much a period where John W. Campbell Jr., the editor and writer, the chap who wrote Who Goes There, The Thing, was the sort of editor on Astounding science fiction magazine. And the general consensus amongst serious SF readers and academics is this, is that the Golden Age of SF began in July 1939 issue of Astounding, which featured stories like Black Destroyer by A.E. Van Vogt, which was the first part of his fix-up novel Voyage of the Space Beagle, which inspired the film Alien, and Van Vogt settled out of court before you start talking about Lovecraft or anybody else. Asimov's story Trends, I think it was his first short story, was in that issue. Heinlein's first story, Lifeline, was in it. And also Theodore Sturgeon's Ether Breather, which I think is a wonderful, wonderful title. So that was the beginning of the golden age of science fiction. In that period, you had the Three Laws of Robotics, you had Heinlein's Future History. These are not authors who at that stage, I personally think, are that good in a literary sense. I cleave more to people like Kuttner and Moore. So just to go back to that, looking at the list of what Gollancz have published in their Golden Age Masterworks, there's about 15 of them. And it's really interesting because only 2 or 3 are actually Golden Age. And they are Fury by Henry Kuttner, Sideways in Time, a collection by Murray Leinster, and that's borderline because that came out in 1950. The stories were probably written before, published in magazines. Arthur C. Clarke's Against the Fall of Night, which was published in a short form in 1948, and then revised and published in book form, I think about 1950-51. And the only other ones which are genuine Golden Age are the ones by E. Doc Smith, The Newest Children of the Lens and Second Stage Lensman. They do a few of these. They do Galactic Patrol as well, which I don't have yet. I've got sort of old editions of Smith in Granada and Grafton, but I do want to get Galactic Patrol because it's very nice. I do think they're really nice books. They're lovely. I think they're really fantastic. Now, Smith, of course, started writing his space operas about 1915, and he carried on throughout his life. But these were generally published, mostly as magazine stories, in the 40s. Beyond that, none of them are Golden Age. There are several books from before the Golden Age. They're preparing an Edgar Rice Burroughs one. There are 2 by C.L. Moore again, Jirel of Joiri, which is fantasy, not SF. Fantastic stuff, and also her Northwest of Earth collection, featuring Northwest Smith, who I've always said is the inspiration for Han Solo. These were published in Weird Tales, and they were published in the 30s, and they were nearly all published by 1939 at the latest, if not before. So they're not Golden Age, they're before the Golden Age. Older SF fans will remember there was an anthology series called Before the Golden Age, which has got all sorts of things in it, published in the magazines between 1925 and 1939. So, literally, we're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4 titles maybe. Let me give you the dates of the rest. So, if we want to talk about C.L. Moore a bit more, and I always want to talk about C.L. Moore, Doomsday Morning. Now, Doomsday Morning, I did some research into this, came out in 1957. Judgment Night, her collection was published by Gnome Press in 1952. I've got a very handsome facsimile of it. So what else have they issued, which is supposedly Golden Age? John Wyndham, The Outward Urge, a collection of linked novellas, 1959, another one added in 1961. Harry Harrison. Harry Harrison was way, way too young to be a Golden Age writer. The Stainless Steel Rat books have been issued in Golden Age Masterworks. And it's bizarre. The first one was published between 1959 and 1961 as a magazine fix-up. And the others came much, much later. The Death World series has been done as an omnibus in Golden Age Masterworks. That was published between 1960 and 1968. What are they doing? Arthur C. Clarke, The Sands of Mars, 1951. So it's borderline again. And Earthlight, I think that was about 1955. Some of these things were in magazines earlier, but they weren't Golden Age stories. So, you look at them all and you think, well, good grief, what are you doing? This is a complete distortion of the accepted history of science fiction. The Golden Age is 39 to maybe 50 at the outset, and 46 is a figure which is bandied about a lot. So basically, hardly any of these 15 books. There are 1, 2, 3, 4. There's Fury, the Murray Leinster, one of the Arthur C. Clarkes, and the 3 Doc Smith. So that's 5 books out of about 15. So only about a third of them are actually Golden Age. I think that's pretty shocking, and it's indicative of the poor editorial standards of Gollancz. Harry Harrison really stands out like the massive sore thumb here. These are books published in the 60s. Harrison, You know, but by no stretch of the imagination could he be considered as a golden age writer. Now, Robert Silverberg said that in his opinion, the true golden age of science fiction was the 1950s. And in the sense that it was a better period, I completely agree. But as we know from comics fandom, these things are not appended with this nomenclature because of quality. The historical definitions. So with comics, the golden age is the 1930s, and you know, slightly after that, the atomic age is the 1950s. The silver age, which is probably the best period in the history of superhero comics, is the 1960s. So, you know, come on, Gollancz, these are not golden age masterworks. You ask yourself, why not put them in masterworks? Is it a sop to young readers who haven't yet had a chance to get up to speed with the history of SF, to look at the different types of writing, to accept that there's, you know, there's going to be a difference in sophistication and literary quality because of the origins of genre SF in pulp magazines? Either way is pretty poor. So when you're buying golden age masterworks, even though some of them are fantastic, like this one by the wonderful C.L. Moore, and this one, Fury, which I say is just absolutely fantastic SF novel, and sort of fairly classic things like Against the Fall of Night, and the sort of clunky but wonderful, you know, seminal space operas of E. Doc Smith. Be aware that not all these books are golden age. Most of them, in fact, aren't. So there's a bit of a history lesson there. We'll be talking again about Gollancz and what's happening in British SF publishing at the moment, because it is really getting me down currently, I have to say. There seems to be very little care and attention being paid, and not a huge amount of work being done to promote good quality literary SF writing that is still genre SF. So this is Outlaw Bookseller in a mood, signing out for now. Bye.